Hi, this is Poppy Masalam, the co-inventor of Hang Your Glass, and I'm here with Paul Mezek, and we are going to talk about the new two-dimensional Super Duty standoffs for panels. It's an interesting story. I've looked at Paul's work for years, and it's very, very thick, and I've always wanted to put it up on the wall, but it wasn't until last year we both were in the UK, and we got to talking, and he said, I do use your standoffs. I said, wow, great. He said, but I don't use them on something this large and heavy.
Yeah, I've used them for years, probably going back 10 or 12 years, both to hang my own work, these panels. I used to do some abstract wall pieces, but when we moved to Chicago, I created 3-foot tall street numbers out of glass and mounted them on the outside of the house, and I use the standoffs there. Even though it's a very harsh winter in Chicago, they worked very well.
Great, that's awesome. So what Paul was using in the beginning with his street numbers was the round standoffs with the J bracket. And basically when you get to 3 feet, 4 feet, you would be adding more standoffs to distribute the weight and equally float the piece off the wall. So there was so much, everybody loves the Super Duty system because you don't see any screws, it's streamlined. So what we did is we had to figure out how to create a Super Duty standoff style that would work with a large, rigid plane of glass. So what we've come up with is similar to the round, and then we have a slide here that works with the rigid material. So once we screw this bracket into the wall, then we drop the standoff in, and it allows for mobility right to left, and it can hang very large and heavy pieces. Now we're gonna take Paul's piece off the wall, and we're actually going to put it on the scale, and then we're gonna put it back onto the wall. So here we go. We look to the side and we pull the piece off just easily like that. Usually I can do it by myself, but this piece is so large and heavy and beautiful and valuable. And here we're putting it on the scale. See, no hands. And we've got 32.37 ounces. Wow. So in all my destructive tests, I typically show that I'm not concerned about the weight of your piece. I'm concerned about distributing the weight around the panel of glass, or for the blown pieces, using a larger diameter to hold the heavier pieces. And in the destructive test, we basically show that the weakest component is going to be in your installation, the wall. Always goes back to the wall. So let's go ahead and put this, before we put this back onto the wall, Paul, we're just gonna turn to the brackets so that you can see we've used 2.5 inch diameter standoffs to hold this plane of glass. We placed them top and bottom, and then we have oval holes in the screws to allow for vertical movement with the 2D system and the slide. Now we're gonna hang this piece back up. Make sure our standoffs stay. I've got the top. Got it?
Yep.
Perfect, let's drop. There we go. And there we have it. And now we're gonna talk about the Super Duty standoffs in comparison with the new two-dimensional Super Duty standoffs in which we can hang these large planes of glass. So first, the Super Duty standoffs are loved by our customers. They're typically used for blown pieces which only have one attachment point. So basically, the bracket would, find the right bracket here, the bracket would just slip in, and you see no screws in the wall, and it's a really clean and professional way to complete the presentation of your glass. Okay, and now that you've seen the Super Duty, we're gonna talk a little bit about positioning of the standoffs and show you this really slick two-dimensional self-adjusting Super Duty. So here we have our bracket that we showed with the oval holes, which gives us up and down movement with the rigid material of the glass especially. And then we have the standoff, which has a slide effect to it that goes side to side. And then we have a nice, clean, streamlined look. So you have a complete presentation of your art glass. So originally, and these are still great to use, and these are what Paul used to hang his numbers outside in Chicago, the Windy City. So usually on a large pane of glass like this, we would put 4 standoffs. Well, we could do this with a 4 3/4 inch diameters, but if we got 4 by 8 feet, we'd have to put 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom, and it just didn't look as clean. So again, lots of artists working with flat work wanted that look of the streamlined Super Duty. So we came up with the slide that we added to the Super Duty system so that you can use it in multiples. Now, it's best if you use either 2 or 3. It's very difficult if you use 4. So on Paul's piece, we used 2.5 inch diameters, and we placed them on the top middle and the bottom middle, and it was perfect. Very easy to install, very easy to do. On this plane of glass, it's not as heavy as Paul's, but because of the plane of it, we had to use 3. So first we put the 2 on the side, but the plane of the glass tilted back into the wall, which is not the float effect that we want for our art glass. Or if this was a dry erase board in a corporation, or if it was a board in your house that you wanted to put pictures on, however you want to use it. So as you can see, the slide, that's kind of awkward. So the way that this system is a little trickier to think about when you're going to adhere the standoffs to your piece. The first thing that you want to do is you want to tape around where your standoffs are going to go, and you want to tape the slide effect of the standoff so it can't move during your gluing application, okay? So as you can see, we know that this is going to be our top, and then what I do is just use the pinhole here and basically find it where it's level, so I've arrowed it off here and here. So when I adhere this, I want to adhere it as close as I can. If I'm a little off, I don't care, because the oval holes in the bracket is going to make up for that. So I've got these together, I've glued them. You can see I've marked this left and right, and then when I do my gluing, it's going to set in 5 to 10 minutes. I cross tape this to hold the standoff in position while it's setting during that time. The other thing about these 2-dimensional standoffs is when you go to hang them, you have your bracket in the wall, and you can tape it together at that point, but you want to have this perfectly. You don't want it sliding at all. So essentially, when you put it into the bracket here, it creates its own effect of needing which way it needs to go with the other bracket on the slide, if any. And the reason why we placed the standoff on the bottom opposed to the top is that we found that it was really hard to put this one standoff in and then get these ones aligned together. So if we aligned the 2 across vertically, then basically on the bottom one, we inverted the bracket, placed it down, made sure that our standoff was not sliding, traced the bottom of the bracket. Then we simply pulled that off, used our trace line, and screwed it in, and then we both stand to the side. These do typically need 2 people to hang, although I think we might have some exceptions. But you just stand to the side and you both look together, make sure your barrels are solid and not sliding, and then just simply slip down into the mouth of the brackets. And this is the new Super Duty system. It's very slick. It can be used on 4x8 pieces of glass, be used on large, heavy pieces of glass. Paul, do you have any questions or comments about your piece hanging and how it's hanging and
Yeah, I love the way it looks on a wall without any hardware at all. So I love that floating look. One of the things I was concerned about is whether you would see the standoff through the piece. And there's no spot where it's visible at all. So I think it gives me a very clean look. And for someone who wants to buy this and put it in their home or in their office, it's a very, very good and safe system.
secure, super secure. And the other thing is it's one of the first questions that's always asked to me is, you know, is the viewer going to see the standoff through the glass, just like Paul asked. And you know, I personally worked with a lot of transparent glass, and I hang so much glass, and it's such an original float effect, and being able to overlap it, whether it's transparent or opaque, your viewers are looking at your art, and even if they see the hardware, they're more intrigued by the float effect of it. So thanks for tuning in, and thanks Paul for coming over and helping us out with this new video.
Thank you, Poppy.